So yeah, Sam, welcome to number 9. Thank you, Linz, for coming along, taking time out of your day to come and share a little bit about yourself. So again, I'm not going to share too much about me. I'm going to try not to jump in too much. But Linzee's come over kindly to share her experience, through addiction, what it was like for her coming through into recovery, and where your life's at now. She's got an amazing life.
My name's Linzee. I'm also a recovering addict. And I think like most people really, addicts, like I was also very young when I started using substances, 11, 12, because you like traumas, when I lost my brother, and then I sort of lost my mum mentally, emotionally, she was grieving, do you know what I mean, for her son, and she just wasn't there anymore, so I'm 11 years old, grieving for my brother and grieving for my mum, do you know what I mean, it was really, really tough, and, I started secondary school and I hated the world, I didn't know what resentment was then, do you know what I mean, I do now, and I hated everyone, I wanted everyone to hurt the way I was hurting, my brother was my best friend, obviously my mum was my best friend, and someone I knew that I loved so much sort of like left me, do you know what I mean, and I didn't quite understand, and, I started getting into a lot of violence, and ended up started drinking, but I'm like, again, I'm the same as my partner's already mentioned, I don't use successfully, I wish I could, but I never use successfully, like a crack fiend on any substance that I used, do you know what I mean, I couldn't use anything, any substance lightly, I've got to have it all, do you know what I mean, I've whack it all on the pipe, whack it all in the pin, or I whack the old bag in a line, I use the same, like I use every other substance, I always thought I was different to everyone else because I never touched heroin at first, I was at party drugs, and it got bad where I was going to school, like in my own little world, in the toilet on pills, like, oh, do you know what I mean, and, and then it just like, slowly, like you get a bit bored and, and I started having heroin, like I always said, I'll never touch smack, I'll never rob my gut nan, do you know what I mean, I'll never inject, it's filthy, and I was that person, do you know what I mean, I injected left, right and centre, and I lost everything pretty quick, it took me, to the curb, the gates of hell, like, I was in addiction for like 23 years, and it's, I celebrate 5 years clean Wednesday.
Congratulations, Linz.
Thank you, yeah, it ain't been easy. But, my worst time, when I'm in a corner, with psychosis, paranoia, don't even know myself anymore, in the end I lost the will to live, like, I got sick and tired of being tired, and, I also didn't want to live anymore, but I didn't want to die because in the back of my mind, my family have already lost one son, don't want to lose another, but the reality was I was killing myself slowly anyway. My family were quoting up funerals, for me, because it got to that point, in and out of hospitals where I'm overdosing on heroin, all different other substances like pre-gabs and all that, and alcohol all in one, took my dignity, I had to go to lengths where, I was in and out of jail a couple of times and I thought, I don't want to be doing this, do you know what I mean, and so I took another route. I didn't want to rob off my family, so I took my dignity, and again I used to think, I ain't no prostitute, do you know what I mean, I don't go and suck for rock. But I was the same, just because I didn't do it on the streets or work in parlours or, I was still sleeping with male and female to get money to fund my habit, you know, and it comes to the point where I need to drink that much, I'd be crying because I just didn't want to do it anymore. You know, I lived in a tent with rats and maggots, you know, like it looked like I was in the middle of a tip, you know, all clothes and all where like, a few people have lived in these tents, do you know what I mean? And it was horrendous, you know, and you know, in that time scale of addiction, active addiction, I put myself into so many dangerous situations. You know, I got gang raped, you know, I met somebody who funded my habit called sugar daddies, who groomed me for a while before things started happening, and I got abused by him, and that's who I used to do things and took my dignity for, having people around. And yeah, you know, but alongside of that, you know, the ripple effect on my family, you know, what it did to my family, you know, all the behaviours that come with it, you know, you're lying, you're cheating, you're manipulating people, you know, and you don't care what you do, do you? You don't care who you hurt on the way, you know, that self-centred, selfish person, you know, but it just shows you just go to any lengths to get what you want.
You just shared that you'd been groomed by this individual, and
yeah,
how
18.
Old? So you was 18.
I was 18, yeah, I was 18 when that happened, and this person was in my life for a very long time. He's no longer here now. Yeah, he was in my life because he funded my habit, but then it got to the point where I couldn't blag him anymore because he was wise to it. You know, and then I ended up like robbing off him and stuff, and it's just that cycle, isn't it? You know, we put ourselves in dangerous situations. You know, we don't have that awareness, do we? Where like we just don't care.
No.
Do you know what I mean? And yeah, it got really tough. Like, you know, I've woke up in graveyards with nothing on, not knowing how I've got there. You know, you know, my stepdad, he I think he found me in the graveyard, and I still don't even know how that even happened. You know, I've been unconscious outside my mum's and ended up in hospital, tubes down me. You know, I've ended up waking up in all different areas, not knowing how I got there. You know, so many blackouts. You know, my violence was really bad, but towards the end it got to the point where I didn't even leave the house. I was too scared. You know, I was like creeping around like in my own place where I lived. Like, I've had places where I've lived and tried to maintain them nicely and live nicely. You know, I didn't know if I was coming or going, I didn't know who I was. I was that scared little girl. I didn't even know recovery existed in the drug world. Do you know what I mean? I didn't even know. And it was when I started this other substance called monkey dust. That was when things happened. Like, I got gang raped, and so I got spiked and gang raped. A lot of things happened on that. I think that drug was the worst drug I've ever had. You know, even worse than crack and heroin. But then my family scene, like, you know, I was so thin, I don't even know how I could stand up, you know, and they wanted me to go to a rehab, and I was the same, like, rehab, like, for celebrities, do you know what I mean? What the hell, do you know what I mean? I was like packing my bikini and all this, thinking like, oh, what's all this? You get a swimming pool and all that sort of stuff, deluded and all that. And
just before we get on to coming on to that, not to cut you off, but for those that are watching, and even for myself as well, just share a little bit about monkey dust, because that's an evil drug. What I do know, it's an evil drug, and it's, you know, it's not easily accessible. But what was that experience like? What was monkey dust like?
The only way I can explain it, so when I had it, I was paranoid anyway. But when I had it, it was like I was getting onto things, like, it sounds mad, right, but the next block over, I was like, I could hear, right, and I spoke to somebody and I said, I feel like I'm going mad, I'm getting onto people, I'm noticing things, right, I says, and I'm hearing things, and they were like, you're not, Linz, like, you're not imagining things, that is, he said, it opens, it's got something in it, angel dust or something meant to have in it, and it opens some part of your brain. And I was literally like, I could go on for ages and talk about my bad experiences, but we ain't got time, do you know what I mean? But all I can say is the most worstest drug that I've ever had. You know, you have it for one night and you lose a rapidly amount of weight. You know, a lot of bad things happened. You know, my flat, people where I lived in Stafford, you know, it's a very booky place. Even that word alone, booky, sounds awful, don't it? It was such a booky place, and people had skeleton keys, and that weren't my imagination because I pulled one off someone's neck, do you know what I mean? And they were coming into my flat, and I was convinced, right? So I never had people in my flat, I never used to have people, so I was quite too paranoid and that. And I used to say to someone I was with at the time, I'm like, people are hiding drugs in here, I know they are. Like, you're going mad, Linz, you need to lay off that monkey dust. And it was true. People come and knocked on my door, these lads, never met them in my life. Apparently they'd just come out of jail the day before, 10 years for stabbing someone. And they asked to come in, I said no. And they were like, we just need to speak to you. Got a bit of dust for sale. So I'm like, oh, come on then. I said, but whatever you do, keep your hands to yourself, do you know what I mean? And like, you need to go in a minute. And they'd come in and they'd offered somebody else that I was at the time this bong, and I went, not a chance. No, and I tipped it down the sink, right? Thank God I did, because I didn't trust anybody, do you know what was in it or not, what, do you know what I mean? And they started to kick off, and there was a girl there, and I ended up getting into a fight with this girl. And you know, I hate this because the person, that monkey dust gives you that much strength. I punched my bathroom sink, that's why my hand's so buggered up, and it broke off. I couldn't do that now, like the strength that you have in it. And I ended up I really harmed this girl really bad. And anyway, next minute, these lads were in my bedroom, getting my drawers, putting my carpets back. Where's our stuff? They'd been hiding stuff in my flat, and it's just, I was right all along, do you know what I mean? But it's like, and that's when after that, all them people had done that to me, like gang rapes, and for years I blamed myself for that, for what I did to that girl. But no one deserves that. No one deserves to go through that, you know. And yeah, it affects me differently. I was completely like, just, cause it was like I was latching onto everything, like, oh, you know, there's always something going on. And it just didn't agree with me. I was just so paranoid. I was seeing people having it, and I'm just like, having it like it's normal, and they don't look like it's affecting them, do you know what I mean? But it makes you like see things differently, if that makes sense. It's really mad. Like, I believe, you look at the world today and it's false. Obviously, that swing there ain't false, but what I mean is, like, what we see, it's a lie. And I'm a big believer of that, and this is why when we have like acids and mushrooms and stuff like that, that is what the world's like when we see it. Might sound a bit weird.
So it's like opening up a portal.
Yeah, because it is. Like, we've got a brain that we don't, some parts we don't use, do you know what I mean? But it's there for a reason, do you know what I mean? And I believe that some parts of your brain open up and you see things, yeah, it's real. Like
however,
Matrix.
Having said that, however, you know, monkey dust, you know, we only usually hear about it on headlines or something's done something really crazy. I know there was a police officer that got murdered recently because of monkey dust.
People walk off the roofs and think they can fly. Yeah, I ran in front of I was running over the road, and I'm telling you now, right, this is how close this car was, right? The back and my jumper went up because the car flew past me, and I've launched because I thought I was being followed. I thought I was in the what's the show with Jim Carrey in it. Truman Show. I thought I was in the Truman Show. I thought I was being controlled, right? I thought I was seeing all cars with different foreign number plates, right? I thought I was being followed, and I was running for my life. You know, it was 7:30 in the morning on a hot day, but I thought it was about 11, and the town was shut, and there was the council people doing all the plant pots, looking at me, and I'm like, do you know what I mean? I felt like I was being controlled, and it was awful. And I ran over this road and literally missed the car like this because I just thought I could fly, do you know what I mean? And it was like, yeah, I've yeah, really bad joke.
Thank you for sharing that. I just thought it would be important to kind of capture that, do you know what I mean? Because we don't often get people share about monkey dust, so you know, I know there were some dark parts that you lived through, and so yeah, thank you for being honest and sharing that. So coming back to packing holiday bags for rehab.
Yeah, I went to a rehab, also a 12-step rehab, and I never had a clue about 12 steps, never even heard of NA, or do you know what I mean? I've heard of Alcoholics Anonymous, but never heard of Narcotics Anonymous. I just went, my family dropped me off because they paid a lot of money, and I know, in that moment, I felt like I just needed a bit of a break. I always knew I was going to use again, and obviously I went to rehab, quite liked it actually. It was in Leicester in 2019, and it was when I pulled up, it was just like this old building, not even much to it, but I didn't realise there was a separate house that you had to go to. But when I went there, yeah, I liked it, you know, and then I got introduced to the fellowship, which I love. But you know, I think when I was there, I thought I was doing alright, but like, I think behind the scenes, I think I was lying to myself and lying to others. You know, I was just faking it to make it, I suppose. Like, there was a lot of things I didn't speak about in the therapy stuff because reservations, do you know what I mean? Which I didn't know that was one then, but obviously I do now. You know, something that I always wanted to use on, I suppose. And I completed the whole rehab, and I relocated. Like, I've done that geographic all over the place, thinking I could get clean, but I was the problem. But I stayed over Leicester. I'm trying to move it fast and try to be just because of the time.
No, take your time.
I went to the fellowship and I met some lovely friends, lovely people in the fellowship that I'm still friends with today. And I ended up going to the rooms for the wrong reason, getting into a relationship which shouldn't have happened, ended up relapsing, and then I went back to Tamworth, where I'm from, relapsed for 2 years, and that's where it got really messy and got really bad, the addiction, and that's when I was like, that's when my light bulb switched on, and I was like, thank God, when I had that bit of recovery, I took the piss out of it. I thought, is this it? Because I didn't want to get clean, I didn't have that action to put in. So having that little bit of recovery, when I did go back out, I knew what I could have. And because I had that little bit of knowledge of recovery and the 12-step fellowship and stuff, I knew what I needed to do, and I managed to go into another rehab, which I applied for myself, going through the right drug and alcohol services in Tamworth. And you know, I waited, and I'd done all the pre-rehab groups that I had to go to, and so that I could go into rehab. And then from that day of going into that rehab, I knew I had to change everything. Do you know what I mean? It wasn't the case of going in there and just getting clean and coming out and doing the same thing. I had to change everything, my thinking, you know, my behaviours. It's no point getting clean and still coming out and going shoplifting, is it? Do you know what I mean? It just does not work. You have one foot in recovery and one foot out, you piss all over it, don't you? You know, and I was petrified, do you know what I mean? I was petrified because I knew it weren't going to be easy, coming off a lot of prescription meds, as well as crack, heroin and alcohol. But I did it, and I stayed there for nearly 4 months, and you know, the work was when I come out, that's when I had to. And come back over to Leicester to celebrate my 6 months at other members of the fellowship, and they were like, come back to Leicester, and I had no plans whatsoever coming back to Leicester. Do you know what I mean? I was living in Cannock at this time when I'd come out to a move on house from the rehab that I went to, and I come back over here, and you know, I got a sponsor, went through the steps and all that sort of stuff, and I'm going through them again, and you know, my life is completely changed. You know, I've met my partner who's going to be my husband, you know, also who's my best friend. You know, got a little girl, you know, she's 1, she's beautiful, you know, she's so perfect. You know, I must have done something right to deserve her, because she's just the most beautiful little soul. We've got another little boy on the way.
How far gone are you now?
23 weeks, yeah. And you know, like 5 years, I celebrate 5 years Wednesday, and it ain't been easy. You know, recovery is beautiful, but you know, they don't say it's full of angels and unicorns and rainbows. You know, I've travelled the world. I've also worked in this area of this field of the drug and alcohol services. You know, I gave back and I volunteered for the Hep C Trust. You know, I've also had employment. You know, and now I'm a full-time mummy, you know, and my life has just completely changed, like, full circle, you know, because of, like, recovery, you know, the fellowship that we mentioned, and, you know, my home is here. You know, it's like, everything I have in my life today was once dreams, hopes and wishes. You know, it was far from thinking it was going to come true, you know.
Did you ever think, you know, when you first come round and they said to you, and you heard that stuff, life beyond your wildest dreams, and you know, X, Y, and Z, did you ever conceive, did you ever think to yourself, do you know what, this is, because my idea of a life beyond my wildest dream was, you know, getting from paycheck to paycheck without smashing it on using, and I thought that was a win, right? I thought that was a win. And then I thought, oh, you know what, maybe it's a big massive house on the hill and, you know, all this kind of stuff, but they're just pipe dreams and stuff. But this, what you're living now... My take on living a life beyond wildest dreams was, like, probably, like, in Barbados with my cocktails and, you know, but you know what, it's not, you know what it is, right? You know, yeah, I have all the external stuff, right? And you know, I have my family, you know, that's all I've ever wanted. I'm getting married, got a beautiful home, I'm doing my driving lessons, you know, I have an amazing partner, and a partner who's the most amazing daddy to my daughter, i.e. the kids. But you know what it is, it's that, you know, having your own peace of mind, having your own peace of mind, having responsibilities that you can deal with, you know, financial things that, you know, I couldn't even, I actually used to scrape around for like bloody 20p, do you know what I mean, to try and get a can of flipping beer, do you know what I mean, and like, you know, having me back, you know, having a choice, and this life that I have today, something that once was a dream, is now come reality. And what's it like, you know, now that you're here, because you robbed your family of the idea that Linzee was going to be clean at one time, so they had the hope that you've gone to treatment and then you end up relapsing, and now you're back living this amazing life that you live in. What's it like for them now, knowing that you are now settled?
Well, when I first went to the first treatment centre, my behaviours hadn't changed in a way, in my attitude. They sort of picked up that there's no change here. But when I went to the second rehab, and they were speaking to me on the phone and they'd come and visit me and stuff, they seen that instant change. Everything about me that they seen had changed, and like, you know, obviously always in the background, in the back of the mind, probably like, when is she gonna, do you know what I mean? And you know, I've got an amazing relationship with my family now. You know, like my dad, he was an addict himself, bad gambler, we would never got on at all. Now we have a beautiful relationship, you know. I've always had a good relationship with my mum, you know. She'd never turned her back on me. You know, me and my sister, like chalk and cheese, just did not get on, but we've both been pregnant at the same time. My other pregnancy and this pregnancy, she has a baby Monday, and that's brought us close, you know. They're so proud of me. They are so proud of me, and you know what? They can sleep at night now. They ain't got to worry when the phone rings, thinking, you know, I'm dead. You know, they don't dread to walk through town because people approach them and go, "We've seen your daughter," and it's like, oh no, what's she done now? You know what I mean? That dread every day. Amazing. You know, my mum was always having breakdowns. I remember this one day, because she'd come out of her alleyway and I was half in and half out the road. I basically overdosed on some medication that I'd had, and you know, I was in hospital, and it happened days later, and I was walking through town, or probably staggering, and I just see my mum like in the world of her own, like she was just, I was like, "Mum," like, and I knew there was something, and she just, because of that, you know, she had breakdowns over it, do you know what I mean, like every day, thinking that there's going to be police at the door, that I'm dead, do you know what I mean, and that was the same, you know, I made my brother poorly because of it, you know, they had to back away from me in the end because I was just making them ill, you know, it was only my mum that never did back away from me, you know, but that isn't the case today, do you know what I mean, they don't worry about me, they don't need to, because they know I'm okay. You know, children weren't on the tables for me. Never thought I could have kids. Me and my partner was going through to see about IVF, and we'd passed for that, and not knowing actually on that day I was pregnant. You know, she's our little miracle. You know, we're so lucky and blessed that we've managed to have her, and this is a bonus for having a little boy. And wow, who would have thought that? Because I never have thought that. You know, I've always wanted to be a mummy, and I didn't think I'd ever get to be that mummy. But you know, all this hard work that I've done being in recovery, and having patience. You know, I met my person. You know, I met my soulmate, my best friend. Yeah, it is hard. You know, it's not easy. These last 2 years, I've been like that. You know, I got mental health, bipolar, and I didn't believe in mental health, and I wanted to come off my medication because it's all from drug induced. And I come off my tablets, and I literally handed him a notice because I thought they were out to get me. I was doing a little talk in the fellowship, and that stood up halfway through it, went out.
Remember this, yeah.
And I don't even know how I got out there. You know, I like detached from everything, from myself, but I persevered through it, you know. And then I conceived Romy Lee, again, all I've ever wanted, but it happened so soon. I just met Joe, and everything just happened, and I struggled really bad. And instead of working my program, I shut off, I shut down, isolated, you know, and I was paranoid. It was like I was still in addiction, but without using. You know, the things that were going through my head, yeah, it was really horrendous. And until one day I had to ring up mental health and got the help that I needed. And yeah, it was really, really hard. I don't know how, I never used, but there's a difference because I've got a choice and I don't want to use. I had a supportive partner, my backbone, my rock, you know, and today, my family's enough. If I was in addiction, it wouldn't have been enough, do you know what I mean? And this is why I keep coming back, because my life today is all I've ever wanted, and it's beautiful, you know. The life what I used to live, that's no life you want to live. It's not a life, you're just existing, aren't you? Do you know what I mean? I was dead. I was already dead, do you know what I mean? I was just breathing. But inside, yeah, I was gone, and I keep coming back because this is the life I want to continue having the principles in my life, being honest, you know, having a healthy relationship, and being the best mum to the best of my ability, and the best partner to the best wifey. You know, and I never want that to change. I never, you know, don't get me wrong, in these last 2 years, things are coming appealing to me. Like, I hear people like who's in recovery, but their own recovery and still drink, right? Like, don't use the rooms, and I'm thinking, do you know what, I reckon I could use, I reckon I could have a drink, right? And I had to sit there and put myself in the last place I was in before I went to rehab, to remind myself, you know, even though drugs isn't on the books for me today, do you know what I mean? But things were coming appealing, my thinking was reverting, but no matter how much I struggled, I know I didn't have to go and pick up a drug again, because life is hard, do you know what I mean? But all we've ever known is just to use drugs to, you know, to blank that out, but that isn't the answer, is it? You know, this is the answer.
Amazing,
Beautiful
Linz.
life,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
absolutely amazing.
Thank you, it's an honour to have me on here today.
Yeah. No, thank you. No, genuinely thank you, Linz, and what you've shared. Again, you know, some dark stuff, but you know, in the same breath, coming out on the other side is absolutely beautiful. So you know.
Can I just say this one thing though?
Of course,
like,
yeah.
you know, I'm quite happy and open to share all these dark things, because, you know, that life that I led is made me who I am today.
Yeah, yeah, and it's what we often say.
And
as
I
well,
am
right?
where I am today.
Yeah,
Because if
yeah.
I never chose that life, I wouldn't be in this very moment, this chair talking to you now, will I? Or with my relationship or my family.
Do you know what I say on that?
Things happen for a
What I
reason.
say is, I regret the people that I hurt along the way.
Yeah.
However, my path has carved me to who I am today.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? And I think that's the most kind of apt way that I could put my journey. You know, whether it doesn't matter. This is your journey has brought you here. My journey has brought me here. Do you know what I mean? Journeys have brought people where they're at. And I think the most beautiful thing and the whole purpose of doing this, you know, is to carry that message. You know, and if Linzee ain't a message to you guys, I don't know. Do you know what I mean? If Linzee could do it, you know, there's many more stories that you could flick through. But Linzee's quite powerful for the places that she's been through and for where she's at now. So let Linzee be an example to you. You know, reach out, ask for help, ask for support. You know, there's loads of help available these days. Do you know what I mean? We're very fortunate. We live in an age where there's, you know, a plethora and banks of support in so many different formats. So you know, if you don't know anyone, go and ask someone. Reach out to your local services, because you know, if we can do it, so can you. So,